for members are going to be priced at £30. Tickets for non-members are going to be £35. So if you want to speak to any member of the council to sign up and pay for your ticket, or if you want to go directly to Mr. Chadwick, who is our organiser for the formal, that would be lovely. That's going to be on the 12th of May. So yeah, hope to see you all there. It'll be lovely. It's going to be in the Ulster Forum Club, and obviously it's going to be black tie, and we're all going to brush up really well. That's it for the announcements as far as I'm aware. I mean, there's another announcement. If all members of the 167th Session Council could reconvene in the Senate Committee room.
Now.
No. Listen. After the debate for a informal trust meeting, I'm going to call it. Yes, that's one of our trust members, if anyone didn't know, Mr. Collins. So that's all the announcements that I have, unless any other council members have any other announcements. No? Okay, then I'm going to invite Mr. Secretary-elect to read the minutes from last week.
Evening one and all. Hello. The 21st Ordinary Meeting of the Labour Ethic took place on the 23rd of April in the Senate room and was attended by 29 members. Private members' business was accepted from Miss Marie-Louise Sinnott, who asked the House about the issue of the Council's Shani Abdul Conference here at Queen's. President's questions were then heard from Mr. Ben Murphy, who asked Madam President about her entire breakfast routine over the Easter period in an astonishing display of interest in pre-lunch itinerary. Mr. President Poyat then moved the House to quasi-traditional round of just 3 minutes, where Miss Rosie Watterson took home the free boozing voucher and, amidst superfluous claims and cheating, a fine was served up to Mr. Robbie Whitehurst. President Poyat had then announced this evening's motion. This House would curb China's enthusiasm. Breakfast fan Mr. Ben Murphy opened for the proposition in stating that, for too long, the claws of the Red Dragon have been stretching across the globe. He compared the global superpower's enthusiasm to that of a child in school who liked arts and crafts a little bit too much. He explained that China has long been flexing its considerable muscles in attempting to appropriate the land and seas of its neighbouring countries for itself, mentioning the Chinese government's insistence that Taiwan still belongs to them, as well as the infamous Senkaku Islands dispute of 2012. He mentioned China's monopolisation of natural resources within Africa, and concluded with the harrowing statistic that the country alone accounts for 25% of global net CO2 emissions. Mr. Oran Kennedy then opened the case for the opposition by making it clear that there was nothing wrong with long arts and crafts. He stated that the opposition was in no way in support of China's actions, yet criticised the emotional and short-sighted view of the proposition that action must be taken immediately and in earnest. He argued that history has taught us that sanctions against countries does very little to combat human rights violations and always hits the poorest hardest. He urged the House to take a literal look at itself in order to observe just how much all of us in the room were dependent on Chinese exports such as clothes and electronics. He stated that the slave labour by which most of these commodities would have been produced would only become more prevalent if the proposition had their way. He closed by saying that if we acted impulsively, we would miss the opportunity to potentially change China for centuries to come, and that change should start from within. Mr. Harry Adair then closed the proposition by warning against the deeply flawed beast of Chinese communism. He displayed how the Chinese government had taken the worst excesses of authoritarianism and the inherent instability of market capitalism and amalgamated them to form a terrifying twin-headed hydra, which was to go forth and tear the Red Dragon in twine. An analogy which he clearly liked, going on to use it 8 more times. He revealed that China's national debt is equivalent to 282% of its GDP, and told the failings of an opaque shadow banking system. He concluded his own personal game of mythological creature bingo in stating that the once mighty dragon is now merely a hollow projection of its own insecurities with regards to central planning. Mr. James McNally then closed for the opposition, and so the debate, by striding up to the lectern donning a shirt with emblazoned, you guessed it, a dragon. He addressed the proposition directly, choosing to respond to their claims of human rights abuse and invasive foreign policy with a curt, yes, and so what? He stated that 3/4 of all aid projects failed due to insufficient transportation, and was quick to herald China's success in carpeting Central Africa and creating an intricate system of highways. He also asserted that attempting to alienate 1/7 of the world's population would be, to say the very least, unwise, and that to disengage with China would be to disengage with reality. He argued that change would have to be implemented internally, and that the Chinese government's hatred of Orwell and Kafka wasn't simply owing to their twee nature, these words, not mine, but was born from the fear of the citizens potentially starting to question its government, God forbid. He concluded the debate by stating that we should focus our attention on helping those within China who wish to see a change in their country, rather than curbing the country in its entirety. The debate then moved to the floor, where questions were heard from Mr. Brendan Kellers, Mr. Brendan Kellers, Mr. Calvin Black, Mr. Owen Keller, Miss Marie-Louise Sinnott, Mr. Craig Miller, Mr. Brendan Kellers, and Mr. Graham Alexander. A preliminary vote was taken based on opinion, which read 6 ayes, 13 nays, 5 abstentions, while a casting vote based on speaker performance read 5 ayes, 8 nays, and 2 abstentions. The motion was defeated. Can I take the minutes as read?
So, as acting president, because Ms. Mariani is kindly judging the Dufferin Competition for tonight, I'd like to open the House to President's questions or questions for members of the Council. If anyone has. What did you have? Mr. Kennedy, thank you.
Madam President, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Enough coffee to wire me to the moon, and what I think was leftover Chinese. Whatever it was delicious. Any other questions? Mr. Rogers.
Did I see stuff?
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr. O'Connor.
Madam President, how many gin and tonics are we going to drink after this?
Not enough. Any other questions before moving on to private members' business? No? Any private members' business? Is that private members' business?
The last drumsticks are sticking.
Yes, that's the point prime members was meant to bring up last year.
Yes, Mr. Cotters.
Why does the candy in the candy corner always seem to be sticky these days?
I have nothing to do with that.
I had a wagon wheel last week and it was sticky. I mean, that's
It is completely comprised of sugar. I don't know what else you expect.
very hot.
So,
Sugar in packets, surely.
I think these are all a bit spoiled. Maybe you can get candy next week. You're not going to be grateful you're not getting any candy. Don't piss them off.
Sorry,
So if you're all finished with your conversation,
Just want to say any candy things are rip off my generation. Just
oh, alright. Okay, so last but not least, all that's done is to welcome the House to the annual Dufferin Competition. For those who don't know, it's our annual competition to find the best speaker of the Society of the Year, and so is dubbed Queen's Orator, which is a very grand title, and you would be getting a medal if you win, but we lost it.
Shame!
And we didn't lose it, the literary of yesteryear.
Past generations.
So you will.
Shame!
No, listen.
You will be getting a prize, which is yet to be decided, but will be magnificent and will be presented at the conference. Lovely and magnificent. The rules of a normal debate apply, so no religious or political polemic. Speakers have 7 minutes to speak, first and last minute of which will be protected, signified by the ringing of the bell. No obscenities, no insults, no personal attacking, no gouging, no scratching. General rules do apply, but there will be judgment passed at the end, and the judges will deliver it during the floor debate, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, enjoy the competition, give them a good grilling, and good luck to all our competitors.
6 minutes.
yeah, it is 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Sorry.
So 6 minutes, the first and last minute of which will be protected. So yes, good luck to all the competitors, and the motion which they found out 15 minutes ago, I believe, is this House would criminalise legalise prostitution. Alright, so we don't listen to me. That's fine. I'd like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Katie Holland, for the proposition.
Ladies, gentlemen, those of you who don't define within the binary, lurificans, sex work is exactly that, work. It is a profession. Under the system of capitalism that we all exist, we have to sell our labour in order to subsist. And for some people, the labour that they sell is their bodies. They should not be needlessly victimised for simply filling the hole in the market. For matching demand, it is history's oldest profession. Legalisation will not increase the number of sex workers, it would simply ensure that the ones that exist are safer. You are not going to stop people from engaging in this job, one that is flexible, works around commitments, works for disabled people, works for students. Demand is always going to be there. People want sex, they want to get down, they want to get sweaty, they want to put their penis inside something other than their own hand. Criminalising people who provide this service has not worked. It makes about as much sense as criminalising yo sushi because people want it. There will always be a demand for raw, wet fish. And it is dangerous. It is dangerous if it is prepared wrongly. But people want it regardless. And I'm not saying that sex work is like sushi, but the basic premise is the same. There is a demand for a service that is not prepared, legalised, regulated properly, can go drastically wrong, and that this demand will be met legally or illegally. Legalisation of prostitution will fill the gap in the market. It will not turn women into swaddled sex slaves like the DUP seem to believe. It will not bring the morals of our society down. Every shop will not turn into Ann Summers. Fluffy handcuffs will not be given to 5-year-olds in school. All it would do is fill that gap in a safe, productive way. There are around 58,000 black market prostitutes in the UK, and they are strong, intelligent, capable people, not just chained up in a basement somewhere, given sex. They have created the Sex Workers Open University, and they help one another. They bring collectives, they work together, they work politically together, they pressure Parliament. The things that they could achieve if they weren't hounded by the police, if they weren't forced to work separately, forced to live in horrible conditions because they couldn't report abuse, forced to work away from collectivism, which helps protect women in the way that they are. They could be, when they could be stopped for being organised, they are unable to protect themselves, to work together, to protect each other when they need it. This is what they do when they are legal and victimised. They help each other get onto university courses. They look after each other's children. They upskill. They engage in vocational education. Imagine what they could do if they weren't hounded by the police, if they were allowed to work openly, legally, properly, no thank you. Imagine what they could do if they were given the freedom to exist like every other citizen in this country. You don't get people going, oh, Alan Sugar, he found a gap in the market and filled it. He's definitely going to hell. He's going to sin. What is wrong with society's obsession with sex? Why is filling a simple gap suddenly sinful if it involves being naked?
On that point, yep. So you have talked a lot about the different levels of sex workers, and that's good, but you also haven't addressed the fact that a lot of prostitution is from human trafficking. You haven't addressed the fact that there are other issues. It can't just be, let's legalise prostitution. There are other strata to this that need to be dealt with.
Well, I'll draw you back to my sushi example. When you let things go illegally, things happen wrongly. People cut corners, people turn to illegal ways to get stuff in because it isn't legalised. If it's legalised, it will be regulated like any other industry. You don't get companies being allowed to bring in slaves to work in factories, so why would you bring in, no thank you, why would you let people, why would you think that if you legalise prostitution, sex slaves will simply increase when legalising every other industry hasn't resulted in that. Anyway, so imagine these amazing resilient people who struggle through so much due to the shit that we put on them, could achieve if we legalised. What they could do, what they could contribute to the economy. If they could go to the police when they're attacked instead of having to suffer, where they could legally declare their income. Legal or illegal, sex work will happen, and it is our choice as a society to accept them or not, because it will happen anyway. People will always want to get laid. And I hope that the House will join me in accepting prostitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Waller, for a terrific speech, and I'd like to invite the first speaker from opposition, Mr. James McNally, to take the floor.
to listen to us speak. We, on the opposition side of this house tonight, believe the great lie of prostitution is that it is a method of empowerment of women. This is not true. It is the oldest form of institutionalised misogyny that exists, and as with all other forms of sexism and misogyny, must be tackled. I'll start with a few points of rebuttal, and then I'm going to get on to the main outline of my speech. Okay, first of all, we've been told that it's only a form of selling labour. We on this side of the house think prostitution is a bit worse than just selling labour. We don't think it's the type of labour where most people want to sell. We don't think it's the type of labour where the daughters of mothers who bear them should be aspiring to, and I'm going to get up to that in the second part of my speech. Secondly, it's been pointed out, and I'm very glad it's been pointed out, how organised and talented the sex workers of this country are. There are a few points in the first speaker's argument that I think give a lie to some of her later statements. First of all, why would prostitutes be organising to educate themselves and gain skills not necessary to act prostitution if they wanted to continue working in that field? I think it's indicative of perhaps a slight I think it's indicative of a slight dissatisfaction with the field they're working. No, thank you. I'm moving on my speech. My speech is three parts. First of all, we want to talk about the idea that since a crime is inevitable, it ought to be legalised. We think that's a fallacious argument. Secondly, prostitution is about women, as has been pointed out, and very glad it's been pointed out, and we believe it's a method of oppressing women. No, thank you. I have to actually get on with the speech first. And thirdly, we believe it harms wider societal discourse about sex and consent that need to happen. Okay, so first of all, we've heard a lot, but since a crime is inevitable, it ought not to be criminal. And this simply does not follow. Here's a list of some other inevitable crimes: murder, rape, and slavery, all of which have occurred throughout human history and unfortunately will continue to occur. We need to help solve these problems. Moreover, crimes that have been decriminalised have not simply disappeared or become enjoyable. In Western Africa today, the crime of witchcraft no longer exists on statute books, yet women across Western Africa, whenever they have their periods, are still sent to special villages in which to live in even greater endemic poverty because they are unable to gain societal acceptance. Secondly, another example would be drug legalisation in Portugal. There have been a great many good things with drug legalisation in Portugal, but it has not solved the problem entirely. In fact, the leader of the head of the government agency that has been tasked with managing the decriminalisation of drugs in Portugal said that if they hadn't instituted all these many other public programs, then along with decriminalisation legislation, then it would have been a total disaster. And I would like to hear the opposition tell me exactly how, and I mean precisely how, sex workers are going to be protected under a legal system, and how that differs from our current system. Whereas in the UK, in the UK, currently offering prostitution as a service is not illegal, but soliciting of it is illegal. That means that abuse is still illegal. And the fact that abuse of prostitutes has been illegal has not prevented it from happening. I do not see, and this side of the house does not see, how legalising the whole of the crime will make it okay. Moving on, we believe prostitution specifically is a method of oppressing women. But quite startling statistic we were given whenever we were allowed to prepare was that of sex workers, I believe it was somewhere in the 52% of women surveyed stated that pornography had played a significant role in what we were asked to perform. I think this tells us something about the nature of prostitution, and that is what it is about male power and male fantasy and power fantasy in acting. It's not about one being allowed to express themselves. Sex workers are given very specific roles they need to fulfill, and this occurs even within systems where we're legalised. I don't believe that being asked to do sexual acts is something most women want to do. I know it's not what I want to do, and I won't wish it upon any of my other fellow creatures. And this side of the house doesn't. We do not believe the act being illegal stops prostitution from occurring. I'll take your point in a second if you say standing, but we do not see how illegal or legalising it will cause it to disappear. Yes, sir?
You might not wish having to perform certain circumstances as any of your fellow creatures, but would you equally wish them never to have the choice to do that should they want to?
Okay, well again, under the current system, women are allowed to offer the service, people just aren't allowed to accept it. I understand that that's in de facto, it doesn't make a difference because if your service is illegal, no one can buy it. I think we're going to make a powerful case on the side of the house, but it's not a service we want people to be offering, and the freedom of our citizens can in fact be is often impinged, as in the case of slavery, and the selling and managing of it, whenever we believe it harms the wider society. So again, that argument doesn't follow. Moving on, most prostitutes experience abuse and institutionalised abuse and repeated abuse throughout their lives. Thirdly, I don't have much time, but I'll get to it very quickly. We think there's a huge problem in society with the idea of sex and consent. The two aren't synonymous, and they ought to be. Great statistics tell you that, and the culture surrounding universities so on will tell you that, and I would need to explain that to this house. We believe on this side of the house that sex is a mutually fulfilling activity. It's an enjoyable act between partners, and that's how it ought to be. It is not something that can be bought and sold. I cannot buy and sell fulfillment. I cannot buy and sell comfort. I cannot buy and sell human emotion. We believe sex falls within this wider category and ought not to be treated as a commodity. So in conclusion, we are united with the proposition on one very important issue, and that is concern for sex workers. And also, I'd like to make clear, we do not wish to judge sex workers. Those who sell sex are not doing it because they're bad people or want someone to feel bad about themselves. They're doing it because they feel they have to. We believe we must aid them, but legalising the selling of sex is missing the point dramatically. This is a problem that can be solved, and as opposed to reality would ought to be submitted to. Misogyny, the abuse and commodification and objectification of women are not matters that we propose to fight, and for this reason, we beg the House to oppose this motion. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you very much, James. I'd like to now invite Mr. Miller to take the floor for the proposition.
A couple of bits of rebuttal first. Just to talk about pornography, that it's actually used as a circular sort of tool, that some people engaging in this sort of work actually use the pornography to advertise what they're selling so that people go to them for business. So it's what you've just said isn't entirely of the picture of what's happening in the market. Okay, so it's not true. In terms of protection, I will talk about police training, STI sort of testing, drugs in the industry, and how by legalising it you're going to remove the black market gangs and trafficking. The first thing to talk about is black markets and sort of money laundering. Now, drugs and prostitution, the money that gets brought into the system, and the way that money gets laundered is one big enterprise of criminality. You have industries that are set up just to launder the money. Now salons and nightclubs back in the 70s are the main ways in which that's happened. If you basically are able to take out one of their sources of income, you're collapsing this black market economy. So the actual way in which these people are making their money and using their money is going to decrease, which is why legalising prostitution and going down this route is itself the protection that's needed, because you're getting rid of the actual criminal enterprise and the criminal infrastructure. These gangs that are engaged in trafficking and prostitution, they basically are their co-business at the same time as drugs. Okay, and that's why you see a lot of people that are engaging in drug use at the same time as prostitution. Now, there is a chicken and egg argument as to which one comes first. Did they use drugs, go to the gang members, then get into prostitution to pay their debts off, or did they go into prostitution and then use the drugs to deal with it, or did they just get forced the drugs upon them? But effectively, by legalising this, you're taking that black market element of prostitution out of the game, okay, and therefore you're giving them the protection that they need in terms of the drugs that they're taking. Now, it's extremely important that we stop this money laundering cycle. Okay, a lot like people talk about tax evasion, money laundering is just as important. Unless you are able to collapse the way in which they get their money into their circular flow of money, which is taking away prostitution from the situation, it's never going to happen. You're never going to be able to take the drugs off the streets. You're never going to be able to offer them the protection if you can't take away the institutions in which they're actually able to launder their money through. There's no point having a hell of a lot of cash. Yeah.
Surely it's a lot more complex to prevent this big criminal industry of money laundering than just saying, oh, we'll legalise this thing, we'll legalise this thing. Even if you legalise things, people are still going to try and do them criminally, people are still going to try and do them outside of the law. It's not going to simply end this whole cycle just like that.
Okay, so in terms of the way this works, what you generally have is one crooked or a group of crooked accountants that are in the centre of the black market gang, and they have X amount of money coming into the system. They need to have a certain amount of money for the actual system to be working properly. If that's not working properly, in terms of the money coming in, there's no point having the rest of the infrastructure associated with it. And The only way you can start taking that out of the system is by legalising prostitution, having it working through the correct economic processes. So, if you start legalising prostitution, you start increasing economic revenue. We need more money into our system. Okay, we have a deficit of £100 billion. Okay, and this is something that happens all the time. Okay, it's happening on a daily basis. I think the figures at the moment are 58,000 sex workers in the UK, and there's money that's been coming in and basically going down black market routes.
Points.
Yeah.
Surely money laundering is putting the money back into the tax system. And so it will make any difference whether the money is being laundered or going into our tax legally, because the money will still be going in.
Okay. So it really depends on where the source of the money is coming into and going to. Generally, these companies don't work in one country. Okay, so at the moment we're having sex trafficking from, say, Albania, and the company will be set up in the Cayman Islands. So the money that doesn't actually ever go back to Albania or stay in the UK. So yeah, the money that might be flowing around, we want it to be paid into the United Kingdom government, into the United Kingdom pot. And the only way that's going to happen in the UK, if you legalise it here, is by paying the tax on the money in this country. Okay, so in terms of the social side of things, people enjoy having sex. Now, why is there a stigma associated with it? And one of the reasons is because it's illegal. We stand half a chance here if you actually legalise it to reduce the stigma that's associated with this problem. And the key here is basically to have the properly trained doctors and police officers in the system to sort the problem out. Now, the stats go, 30% of people are abused at the moment, are abused by police officers. If they weren't the criminal and they were trained properly, this wouldn't happen. Further, men at the moment, or people at the moment that are engaged in this sort of activity, know that they are committing a crime. So they feel that they can get away with it because they're not as worried about getting reported on. So if you actually legalise it, the people that are committing the abuse are less likely to be doing it because there's a deterrent there as much as there's an actual social deterrent not to do it. Is that done?
Mr. Miller, I'd like to now invite Mr. Ben Murphy to take the floor for the opposition.
Ladies, gentlemen, members of the House, vertebrates, small mammals, generally other creatures. This House would oppose the legalisation of prostitution, and I suppose you're probably wondering why thus far no one in this room, this being Northern Ireland, has got up and said, the revellers, the prostitutes, the adulterers. I am not fit, so I'm not going to do that. But I will say that I thoroughly believe that there is a moral argument to be made here, not along those lines, but actually probably more of a feminist argument. I want to make the argument, as my colleague James has touched upon briefly, that prostitution objectifies, in a fundamental way, objectifies women by quite literally making them a commodity. I would like to address the first point made by, the very first point actually made in the entire debate by Ms. Katie Ward, that prostitution is viewed as a profession. It's not actually viewed as a profession. If anything, no. If anything, it's viewed as a service, and that's the fundamental root of the moral implications of this problem. I have points, sir. No, sir. The issue I have with that part of it is that when you view things as a service, when you view something as fundamental as sexuality and sex in itself as a service, then you open something up that has a very important social niche to the forces of the market that really seek to undervalue women as people. When you lower the social status of sex workers, when you lower the status of sex workers as in any sort, it's the same status as waiters or catering staff, you open them up to the same abuse that they get to a far wider scale. I make the analogy, probably doesn't quite work because they're not that comparable as jobs, but imagine if the amount of abuse waiters get, but that gets physical in more ways than one with prostitutes. because of the very fundamental nature of sex. When you view sex as, a service, when you're quite literally selling your body, your social status decreases, and prostitutes are treated as such. They're treated as quite literally commodities. They're, as the statistics have, I think they've been held by the proposition in their argument, that 74% of sex workers now are immigrants. That sort of reinforces the point that prostitution, whether legalised or illegal, that it will remain the preserve of the lowest rung of society. It doesn't elevate people, it doesn't help them in any way, it simply indulges those who have disposable income to do with it what they will. The second part of my argument, I'd like to move on to the case study that is Germany. Germany is held up as this beacon of, the sex industry is very well regulated. Prostitutes are treated comparatively, I emphasise the word comparatively, better than they are in systems where it's a black market service. The problem with Germany is that there is not only are they open to the exact same problems of prostitutes that the black market systems are, there is no evidence to suggest that abuse has in any way decreased amongst that towards sex workers in systems where it's legal. In fact, the issue with Germany they're really worrying about is the fact that there is an issue of overdemand in Germany. The fact is, there's supposed to be a flat rate for prostitutes of being paid £65 for the services, but the fact are there are so many prostitutes so many clients in proportion to prostitutes that prostitutes are having to actually go so far lower than that they don't even have a regulated minimum wage. They're having to sell their services for as low as €1. In some recorded instances, interviewed prostitutes in Germany have actually gone back an entire economic era and are then offering their services for a burger or food. Well, that's not actually helping them now. What's that?
That's exactly the kind of rubbish you get when you impose a price control on a market. It's not really an inherent problem of prostitution.
I'll get to that point now, sir. The issue is when you might be able to remove the criminal element of it, but that doesn't remove the fact that it is fundamentally a service, whether you like it or not. It's not a profession. It will always be treated as a service. It will always be open to market forces. The issue with the market forces is that decreases the price of the service to criminally low prices, and then leaves those prostitutes open to the exact same forces of coercion and exploitation that they were in the black market system. Arguably more so. What else? The analogy was made on my side about the legalisation of prostitution being similar to the legalisation of drugs. And the issue with the legalisation of drugs, as would be the issue with the legalisation of prostitution, is that, as I've already said, it is reserved mostly, or by the vast majority, of lower class people who are in socially deprived communities, who spend the small amount of disposable income that they do on the only thing that they see on their horizon, like alcohol, tobacco, drugs, if they're in the systems that they are legalised in, such as Uruguay. And it doesn't actually help the workers or the customer. It simply propagates this circular system of the exploitation of the worker and the exploitation of the customer. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope I at least made the cogent argument that morally the legalisation of prostitution objectifies women and reduces them to a fundamental level of commodity and a service. And the fact that the case study that is held up as a beacon of why we should legalise it, Germany, has fundamentally failed in all aspects.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Would now like to invite Mr. Brendan Kelvin to close the case for the proposition.
Greetings, everybody. What I'd like to do is I'd like to first make a few points of rebuttal, and then I'd like to try and build in some conclusions, taking off the arguments of the previous speakers of the proposition. This is mostly to compensate for my sheer lack of original argument. Now, there have been firstly, I'd actually like to rebut a point of information from the oppositioner. The point went something like this. It said that it was in here somewhere. The idea was that there's a lot of trafficking involved in prostitution, therefore we should make it illegal. It should be something that's banned. Well, firstly, that's the problem with the market as it exists at present. We want it to be made more legal and more open to try and stop that kind of thing going on. Secondly, there's a lot of trafficking involved in picking lettuce. We do not think of banning lettuce. As a further point, getting into the actual speeches of the opposition, there have been some very strange arguments made today. True inevitability, for the first off, does not entail justness. It doesn't mean we should make something legal just because it's inevitable. But if something's legal and not harmful, or not a bad thing, or it could be made not a bad thing if it was made legal, it is a good reason for making it legal, and that is our argument. As for institutionalised misogyny, it is true that most prostitutes are female. I think that is probably a function of a very sick society, though, who gives males a lot more power and sexual authority, which is utter nonsense and needs to be reformed. And I don't think it's going to be reformed by banning the females doing things that males are also banned from doing, but the females are affected disproportionately by it. Also, the first off believed he was arguing for the laws that exist at present, which he certainly was not. He was arguing for banning prostitution as we are arguing for legalising it. The law as it exists at present is just a mess. The second off argued that prostitution is involved, it causes objectification and commodification because it's fundamentally a service job, not a profession. While serving burgers is also a service job, not a profession. The way he escaped that counter-argument was to say that it was kind of important that sex is what is being sold. But he didn't really explain what is so special about sex. I mean, it's physical, it's so boxing. I mean, he didn't really make it very clear. People care a lot about sex too. People care a lot about philosophy, and I sell philosophy as, well, I hope to sell philosophy as my job. Does that mean my job should be banned? We should ban philosophers? And he's a Stalinist, everyone. No. Yes.
I would say that sex is far more essential to our society than philosophy or, in fact, any other. Without philosophy, we can be perfectly happy, live in our little mud huts, and collect vegetables that we find in the forest. But without sex, we would die out within a generation. So, what are you going to do?
Well, without food, we would die out even quicker than a generation, but we don't ban this stuff. I mean, I don't see the argument, I'm afraid. No, to try and sum up some of the arguments made by the proposition, the first proposer made a very basic point, which I think is a point which I don't think is adequately addressed. This point: what is wrong with sex working, like any other kind of work? You know, there is a demand out there in the market. That demand is something we choose freely to meet, or we hope people should choose freely to meet, because they don't get to choose freely to meet it today because of criminalisation, which forces it into the black market, which was taken up by the second, I will take your point in a moment, which was taken up by the second proposer, who pointed out that the fundamental problem with sex working as it exists in today's society is that it's forced into the black market by the processes of illegalisation and police brutality. Well, not really brutality, just enforcement of a very muddled and confused and badly thought out law. So, the overall argument I want to take from this is, firstly, it's a realist one, but I would like to point out a realist is just an idealist who knows how to use a calculator. It is a realist argument that yes, sex will happen, yes, it is inevitable, but it is also idealistic in saying it is not fundamentally such a bad thing we need to ban it. Nor is selling such a fundamentally bad thing we need to ban it. People should be able to make free choices in this regard, and you can defend that on Kantian ethics if you think freedom is what's important. You can defend that on utilitarian ethics where you think freedom is important to keep people happy. You may or may not be able to defend it on virtue theory, but frankly, you can defend anything in virtue theory. It's just a mess, even worse than the law. Sex working. Your point.
We claim, and I believe backed up, sex workers face demands and face conditions that are worse than almost any other job faced by any other profession in society, and therefore we ought to understand and deal with that sensibly.
Firstly, there are an awful lot of very hideous jobs out there, so I think that's quite a generalisation. Secondly, Yes, some jobs absolutely suck. And I wouldn't claim for a moment that being a sex worker is a really good thing or a really entertaining thing. But then work is filled with unpleasant things. We don't ban it because of it. If there is a job, we do not think usually that being very unpleasant is reason enough to ban it. It might be reason enough to pay people more to do it, but our society doesn't work like that for some weird reason. It might be reason to regulate it properly. It's certainly not a reason to ban it, so I just don't see the argument there, I'm afraid. So, in summation, I think that the proposition has made the case that we should legalise prostitution. We should legalise prostitution for realistic reasons. It is inevitable, it is the world's oldest profession, it will continue to exist as long as there are people who want each other. But secondly, for idealistic reasons. There is nothing wrong with prostitution sufficient to make it illegal. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Miss Sophie Stratford to close the case for the opposition.
I didn't want any shoes earlier, but I've been wearing them for too long now, so. Okay, so with this, I'd like to take this motion somewhere that I'm surprised that no one has yet. And my argument here is that no, we shouldn't legalise prostitution because the terms of this motion do not go far enough. They do not go far enough, and believe it or not, that still fits into the definition that the proposition has been putting forward. So before I go into why this motion doesn't go far enough, I do want to do a little bit of refutation, and fantastically, most of it fits into my argument, which is great. So the first thing that I do really want to talk about here why does everything fit into the deficit of trade? This shouldn't just be about economics. We do need to think about people as well. And it is about, I guess, the moral argument, but for a different reason than what the proposition has been putting forward. The second thing is, it was mentioned by our first proposition that people are being needlessly victimised. That's true. That's not going to stop if we legalise something. Just legalising the thing isn't going to take it far enough. There is so much more that we have to do first. Okay, so the first thing that I really want to say is that second prop, again, you mentioned the fact that legalising this could potentially change the stigmas around sex work. It could potentially change the stigmas that people who do this job face every day. We have statistical evidence that that is not true, that this does not happen. I'm sure that you all saw recently about the bank worker in the Dutch central bank who was fired in Amsterdam recently by her bank because they found out that she had been acting as a sex worker and she hadn't informed her employers. Now, her employers said that they had fired her not because she was a sex worker, but obviously because it's legal. They said that they had fired her because she had become a blackmail risk. That her job was so important that as a sex worker, she opened herself and the company up to blackmail. Now, a discussion of what's actually happening in Amsterdam and what's actually happening in the Netherlands about sex work shows that this is not true. What we can actually see is that even though sex work is legal, the stigmas have not gone away. Just because you legalise a thing does not automatically mean that you're going to take away the stigmas. It does not automatically mean that people are suddenly going to be okay with things. I'll take it right now.
No, I was going to say, well, yes, of course, but we're not arguing it will happen instantly. This is a very deep-seated prejudice, and we can only expect it to disappear over the course of many generations, perhaps. Not 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, and that's fair enough, but it's still not going to happen if the only thing that you do is legalise prostitution. There are a lot of other things that have to be done first. One of these is the statistic that has been mentioned a lot about pornography. Now, I know someone tried to argue that that was a good thing. I think that was great. It's really not a good thing. What we see is that we know this. Most pornography plays on male fantasy. It plays on the male psyche of being in control. We are beginning to get a change in that where, yes, people are using pornography to say, this is what I do, and using it to sell their labour. But for the most part, this is not what happens. We know this. We can see how the ideas that come forward in pornography change from a very young age the way that boys view women, the way that then men view women. And this is just not a good way for us to go.
On that point, Matt,
yeah.
I think the problem with the opposition as a whole thing is you're assuming that the sex workers we're talking about are women. There are a vast majority of male sex workers who are obviously not within your theory of the patriarchy dominating this being about the oppression of women, because there are men who are sex workers too.
No, and I completely agree with you. But when I talk about people that are being needlessly victimised, I think that includes men as well. I think that includes anyone who's a sex worker. They can be needlessly victimised, and that does need to change. Legalising it isn't going to end that instantly. Okay, so the other thing that I really want to talk about, which I think has been mentioned a lot by both sides, is that sex work is being used as a way for men to control women. Automatically, sex work means that women are oppressed. And I think we all need to realise that whether or not prostitution is legal or illegal, in our current situation, men are always going to try to tell women what their feminism should be. Okay? It's bad. Okay? And it's happened from both sides this evening, and we need it to change. So again, simply legalising prostitution, that's not going to do it. We need to take a wider look at our society. We need to take a wider look at the ideas that we put forward, at the way that we teach in schools, at the way that we teach people from a very, very young age, that simply seeing things as controlling women, that's kind of not good. You know, we need to not do that anymore. We need to show people and show it's not just men, it's women too, who objectify men. Yeah.
It strikes me that your argument here is premised on the idea that employment is the same as control, which it certainly isn't, that employment is anything that's slavery.
I definitely don't think that. That was what I was getting from other people, and I was arguing against it. I definitely don't think that employment equals control. That would be really bad. So yeah, this is not a lot. But basically, if we legalise prostitution, it doesn't go far enough. We need to do more to deal with the ideas that are in our society, to deal with the attitudes that are in our society. We should legalise prostitution as part of it, but to simply say this is the one thing that we're going to do is just not good enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stratton. Now I'm going to invite our judges to go and deliberate while we have a bit of a floor debate, and then they're going to come back and join us. That's a weird one.
It's been a problem with the DPC elections, they're being recounted. I know, I've been waiting this whole time as the Democratic Regional Procedures Committee in the US Conference. I ran for it like a week ago, they cancelled today.
Mr. Rogers, would you like to take your seat?
Really?
So we're now going to have a bit of a floor debate. So are there any questions first for the proposition? Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah, I don't really feel that any of the speakers for the proposition have sufficiently addressed the topic of human trafficking or sexual slavery. So could one of you, or any one of you, explain how legalising prostitution would tackle sex trafficking?
I think this comes from who's actually doing the trafficking in the first place. The problem is right now, for example, with what's going on in the UK, and it's actually across Europe and in Amsterdam generally, what the places that the trafficking is occurring from are, at the moment, from Eastern European countries. It's just because the sort of amount of money in their economies isn't as good as the amount of money here. So they think they're coming to a better life. The problem is, and I was trying to get to this in my speech, is that the trafficking is one part of the circular problem. Okay, and it's built into an industry of laundering drugs, laundering trafficking. Okay, and to collapse that part, you need to be taking most of it out. And yet, it doesn't go far enough. So you need to be legalising drugs at the same time. Okay, that's where I would be going, because it's taking away everything that they've possibly got in terms of making money, and there is no money for them to actually bother with the trafficking. There's enough people in the UK, I'm presuming, that would engage in the practice. I'm making that up. Okay, but if you basically take out their sources of income, then they won't be bothered. There's no value in them trafficking the humans.
Can I just add on to that? I think I read somewhere last week that something like only 5% of human trafficking is actually for sex work. So we should crack down on like people bringing in illegal immigrants to pick strawberries and locking them in caravans at night, as opposed to maybe thinking that by criminalising prostitution you solve the problem of human trafficking, because you don't.
Also, to add just a wee bit more to that, just one general point and direct answer to the question. Whenever you decide to legalise something, typically about three things happen. First of all, it comes out into the open much more than it once was. Human trafficking thrives on secrecy. It isn't legal, so it likes hiding. That liking hiding continues whether something's legalised or not, but if something is legalised, you can at least, as a trafficked person, go to the police without fear of being prosecuted for it. The second element in this is invariably things, once they're legalised, are taxed, which is the point made by the... Yes.
Mr. Felton, can you come to your closing remarks, please?
My closing remarks are that once some things are taxed, usually the state also does something else, which is regulate, because it can't really take that money for nothing. It has to step in and say, well, okay, we're taxing you, but we're going to give you sort of protections and organisations in the process. That regulation can't happen when things are made illegal. Therefore, there's a chance that it could be with some.
Are there any points for the opposition? Any points for the opposition? Any points or many speeches on the motion this evening?
I don't think that both sides kind of argued that there needs to be some sort of safeguard in place if prostitution were to be legalised. I don't think anyone really went into what those safeguards would be. Can you elaborate on it?
Can I just remind both sides that one speaker may speak during each question? Opposition would you like to start?
Proposition 1. It was on the motion, so the proposition 1.
Okay, proposition.
Okay, so I think there's three elements here that need to be addressed in terms of protection. You've got sexually transmitted diseases, you've got drugs, and you've got violence. Okay. In terms of STIs, it's a two-way street. Okay. In terms of just people that aren't getting tested regularly will pass it on to other people. Okay. And the epidemiology of that, basically, in that sort of work, is that there's close contact, so there's spread. So that people need to be tested regularly. So that's the first, from a medical point of view. In terms of drugs, again, at the same time as getting tested for STIs, I'd be testing them for drugs. Because if there isn't at this present moment in time any link between drug use and prostitution, so it's a way in which if you legalise it, start testing people for drugs, you can start giving counselling to get people off of drugs, okay? And then they can make a decision if they want to make a decision of carrying on with the work at the same time. In terms of the police, the problem is at the moment it's seen as illegal activity. Police aren't trained as well as they would be in other domains. So you have to train the police to deal with the problem properly. And also there needs to be this reduction in stigma that's associated with the work, so that if they are abused, they know that they're not going to get into trouble for committing a crime. So by taking the crime out of that, they'll be more inclined to actually go to the police in the first place. But secondly, because the person perpetrating the crime is going to be more effort, they're going to go to the police, that itself is a deterrent as well.
Opposition, would you like to start?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically along the same lines as Craig, which is health, drugs, and abuse, or violence. But I think there are a couple of different ways that needs to be looked at. So what we see at the moment, in a second, is this, so 30% of the abuse that's committed against sex workers is committed by the police. And if we just legalise sex work and we just legalise prostitution, that's not going to reduce the amount of institutional violence that still occurs. So that would be my main thing, would be making sure that other institutions can't go and abuse sex workers as they currently do. So that would be my main thing. Again, with health, I think women do come together collectively and other sex workers do come together collectively to do this now, but being able to bring in a way for them to do that without being prosecuted is still the best way forward. So yeah, that would be.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Are there any questions for the proposition? Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. Do you know many girl that says when I grow up I want to be a prostitute? And so that, is it a choice, like a full informed, free and fair decision, or is it a choice someone makes out of dire economy, which is a form of coercion?
Do you think anybody grows up and says, I want to flip burgers at McDonald's, I want to be a waiter, I want to pick up people's sweaty towels at the gym? Nobody wants to do the jobs that they are given. It is this flawed system of capitalism where we have to sell our labour to subsist that is forcing us to do things, and sex work suits a lot of women. Okay, it's not ideal. But working at McDonald's isn't ideal. It suits women with commitments. It suits people with disabilities who can't work normally. It suits students. It suits all sorts of people. I don't think you can say, oh, just because you're naked during it, it's much worse than all other jobs.
Anybody from the opposition?
You may not.
No, I think
Okay. Any questions for the opposition? Any at all? Miss Robertson? No.
Yeah, just on the point that saying it's sort of prostitution is like flipping burgers or something. Finbar put it in a really eloquent way, which is saying no one's trying to stuff burgers into you, which it wasn't great, but you might have a point in that I think there is a difference between sort of selling your services and effectively selling access to yourself. I think they're different, and there might be a moral thing there, and I'm not sure what do you think.
Proposition, do you want to respond?
Sorry. I'm actually going to build on Brandon's point about boxing. I know it got a lot of laughs, but there's actually, if you look at the statistics in terms of trauma that's associated with contact sport, boxing, American football, and basically the health side effects of sex work, you have a lot more long-term problems from the contact sport. At the moment, there was a report that came out in the NFL that they actually tried to ban because they were going to look, I know it sounds ridiculous, but basically what was happening is within 3 years players were getting dementia, okay, because of the head hits. Okay, so I know that's not something getting stuffed inside them, it's their brain turning to mush. Okay, so, and people physically want to do that. Okay, so just because there's a degree of sort of health side effects related to one thing doesn't make it any better or worse than something else. What's that?
Just really to give your closing remarks.
Yeah, and models have access to their body.
Great. The opposition.
Again, like there was a premise made in pre-conclusion. The obvious conclusion wasn't reached because it was disproved what it said. Whenever we come across aspects of labour that harm the health of those who sell that labour, what we try and do is regulate to make it better. So we should improve the health of boxers and American footballers and try and protect their heads better. We shouldn't ban American football.
So we should
yes.
Yeah, thanks. Just
No.
Go back and forth, thanks.
Which snide comments? Which snide comments?
Mr. McGrady,
On your
continue
part.
with your speech.
Again, there are a number of things in American football and with contact sports that provide benefits that prostitution does not provide. We classify sexual crimes differently from physical crimes, not because sexual crimes aren't physical, they are primarily forms of physical violence, but because we have a different category of impact upon those affected by them. When an American footballer gets dementia, but they also get a lot of glory and they get a lot of pride and they get vested societal awards given to them. The sex workers are not provided, and we do not believe can be provided because of the nature of the work.
Any questions for the opposition? Any for the opposition? Any on the motion?
I could respond to
Mr.
that.
Black.
I don't know if there's going to be a question at the end of this. I won't take a deep dive. I'm not figuring out a sense. So bear with me. So imagine a world in which prostitution is legalised and all that, and kind of going back to what Craig kind of said, but we need to take as much away from criminals as possible, so legalising, blah blah blah, and all that. But then criminals typically aren't the type, are they? Just go, oh well, there's nothing worth to do, and oh well, I'll go start a bakery. They'll generally find other avenues to explore and to pursue their criminal ways. So imagine a world in which prostitution is legalised, drugs are legalised, but there's an explosion in the hitman market. What do we do then? What a massive contract killing market. Explosion. What then?
An explosion in the fucking
I
don't know. I mean, I've got a limited training in economics. I mean, my understanding is that whenever a market's taken away from its purveyor, the usual response is the purveyor gets smaller, goes bankrupt, and I think that applies to criminals. I think they're going to suddenly find a new sideline and I don't know, selling balloons or something. Secondly, actually, on a general point, incidentally, which I think leads from that as well, which is if you have the world as a entirely sort of a one where prostitution is entirely legal, what will that overall effect be in the long run? A good example is, again, boxing. Funnily enough, boxing was actually illegal in England up until, I think, about the 1920s. And it was practiced in back alleys in a rather familiar way for the context of this debate. But it was illegal. And it was legalised, and it became fairly respectable, and now it's a major sport. So, in regards to that sort of general points take on the motion, I think there's an argument, something to do with against one of the counter arguments of the opposition there somewhere.
Opposition will do
Okay, so what you actually made there, Calvin, is a point that I really wanted to make and then forgot, because I can't read my own handwriting. So, the whole point of this is that, cool, killing people, that's illegal, right? But people still make a business out of it. And this is the other thing, is that if we just legalise prostitution, people are still going to find a way to do it legally. This is just a fact of human life. People find ways to do things, because for some people that is their way of life. That's, yeah.
Questions for the proposition? Mr. Rogers?
If prostitution is legal, do you think people will suddenly want everyone to know they're prostitutes? Go out in the open, put that on their CV and their Facebook account, prostitute from the year 2010 to 2015.
Anyone want to take part?
You know what I've actually gathered from your question, you're talking about the stigma of being a sex worker. And there's mostly stigma because it's illegal and people don't respect it as a profession. So hopefully, people have really stupid ideas about what sex is. Apparently, you're not meant to give it freely. But people, I think in a generation or so, once it's legalised and it's a general proper job. Yeah, exactly. Porn stars are glamorous. They have conventions. People come and meet them. It's kind of a mini celebrity. And so, a while ago, that was illegal too. So if we legalise it, eventually people will get used to it as a profession and not look down their nose at it as much, or as judge people like people are doing right now.
So can I take just one extra sentence?
I think we need to really resolve the stigma around sex work, whether or not it's illegal. I don't think they should be judged for doing it. Partly because I think it's not something we want. I don't think it's a valuable thing to have a stigma about, but also because I think it makes no sense. If it's going to happen and we want it to be illegal, we also talk about it anyway, and we don't want it to happen. It makes no sense. We need a stigma, and I don't believe legalising it will solve the problem. I think the question is well put, and I just do not believe it's been dealt with about the proposition about how we're going to go about helping sex workers to be proud of themselves and also be able to talk about what we do in public.
Questions for the opposition? Questions on the motion? Mr. Brown?
I have a question for the chair.
Alright then!
Correctly, this time last year, the last incident, the judges took an absolute age to come back, and we are already struggling with questions. So,
do we want to play just 3 minutes?
Yes.
Yes!
Well, sorry,
I was just going to say, if other speakers want to speak after someone that team has spoken as well, because otherwise
we may as well observe the rules of debate as well, Mr. Black.
Do you temporarily waive the rules of the
Second is suspend the standing orders. Exciting.
We always waive things.
Advocates and counsellors whose job in Jordan currently is and is not chairing this debate, Mr. Clark.
If it was yes! That's exactly what I'm doing.
Alright, if there are no further questions on the debate itself. You do the serious one? Alright,
this would be if it was passed and prostitution legalised today or tomorrow or whatever, what kind of time scale do you think would have? How long until it was levels were acceptable for
versus written on the internet. Paying for sex.
Okay, well, there was a point first. Is that really relevant?
I just wanted to make.
Don't do it. It's not relevant.
Would you like to respond?
Yes. My response to that is well, two things. First of all, timescales are uncertain. I think there is at least a reasonable point to be had in the opposition's argument that sex is of the sort of thing that it sort of attracts stigmas like a magnet. And as such, perhaps even after decriminalisation will always remain a little bit stigmatised at least. However, my point, I suppose our core point is, even if that's true, that's not actually reason enough to ban it. There are a lot of things we stigmatise that we don't ban. I mean, think of the amount of horrible editorials in the Daily Mail moaning about people on benefits. We don't ban benefits, we administer them. This is, we do not, stigma is not a reason to get rid of something, and that is the fundamental point that I think the opposition have missed. In regards to timescales, I mentioned the boxing example. I think that's the clearest example we have. In that case, it took about 20, 30 years before the stigma really left, and there were still people hanging on to banning it, and right up until really about the 80s. But that's all I can really say on the topic of timescales.
Yeah? Do you want to?
No, but I just wanted to make a point that I really should have made like 15 minutes ago. No, go ahead.
So, Brennan, I think this is what I thought you were trying to say. Maybe I was wrong, that we should ban people that write Daily Mail editorials. We are trying to do that. Sign the petition to get rid of Kate Hopkins. Do it now. The second thing,
It wasn't actually saying that.
I know that was what you were saying. What was the second thing? I can't remember. Can Ben make his point? Because I can't remember it. And also the motion was seconded.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. There will be an opportunity for closing remarks, closing speeches, should any miscellaneous points wish to be made then. But if the opposition don't want to respond to that point, then we can move on to closing remarks. Okay. We will have a minute per side for closing remarks if one speaker from each side would like to. Feel free.
It will be a minute, but I think it's something to
Have we got speakers decided?
Yeah, I've got one ridiculous point I want to make.
So you've got 1 minute to do it?
You'll understand the rationale.
You know that we're still going to be sat here while we decide. You're not going to leave any questions.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I wanted to make this in my speech, but I basically bottled it because I know it's going to have a ton of bricks. But I wanted to say, what's the difference between meeting a girl on Tinder, paying for dinner, and then having sex with her? Right? Compared to meeting a girl on the internet, paying her the money, and then having sex with her. Anyway, that's the point I did.
Right. Opposition, would you like to make any closing response?
Please respond to that. That's the worst thing that I have ever heard anyone say.
This is why. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't believe that. We're not as arcane to think that no one should have more sex. What we want. I'm saying is terrible. Let me put it to you the way it came into my head, literally about a minute ago. Dogging. Anyone who goes on Tinder or Grindr, you know that lots and lots of people really, really want sex, and a lot of people don't have to pay for it, and they don't go through prostitution. They go to a quiet park and do it at the end of the night. What I am saying is we should have a genuine argument about the nature of sex, remove the stigma, so that people should be able to do that, like the way they go down to Burger King and have burger. They go out to the park, have pop one off, and then that's it. People should have an argument whereby the stigma surrounding sex.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for those closing remarks. Okay, folks, we're going to take a preliminary vote based on your own opinion, and anyone can vote in that. You don't need to have your membership cards. So the evening's motion is this House would legalise prostitution. Can all those in favour please raise your hands and say aye? This is your own opinion.
Own opinion.
Your own opinion. Sorry. All those in favour.
Nice and high.
Six, Mr. Secretary. And all those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Seven. And all those abstaining? 2 Mr. Secretary. Alright, this vote will now be the casting vote for this evening. It won't mean you've won because that's their job. And only members could please vote in this one. So if you have your membership card, thank you, Mr. McNally. So this is based on speaker's performance. Try to vote on who you thought made the most persuasive argument and who perhaps changed your mind during the debate. You don't necessarily have to agree with what they have said. So all those in favour of this House would legalise prostitution, please raise your hands and say aye.
That's not technically how you're supposed to phrase it.
You wanted it? Mr. Secretary?
Is that 4?
4.
And all those against?
That's not.
7. All those abstaining?
Wait,
If you thought the opposition were the best speakers.
Oh, great, then yes.
We'll take that vote again. All those against?
Nice and high. Stop that. 9.
All those abstaining?
Or was it 10?
Alright, the motion is defeated. Oh, frick.
You put the wrong thing.
This has been
It's okay.
So the judges are still deliberating. Shall we play just 3 minutes?
Do you really want to play this one? Please have a chat.
No, play can play. That's where the literature we don't do that.
So, Israel.
The motion for just 3 minutes. This House would vote UKIP.
Great. Do you want this to take 3 minutes?
So, is everyone familiar with the rules of just 3 minutes?
Yeah, but we're
Okay.
fine.
Do we have the speaker start? This House would vote UKIP.
Get away from me.
Go!
Of course we should be voting UKIP. We need to get out of the euro. When we need to get out of Europe, we're paying them far too much money for them to control our rules, not let us regulate our borders. They're taking our money. They're
the money.
No, they're controlling.
We're not vote UKIP because we need to stay in Europe. Because it has been proven that staying in a community of other countries keeps us safer, it keeps us stronger.
It keeps us.
Yeah. No, that's
just wrong. So I'd like to stand up today and speak to you about why we should not vote for UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, one of the most caustic, terrible political institutions that I have ever come across in all of my days. I would like to present to you today a simple argument as to why we should all instead vote for the Gerald Party. A reputable source of all things.
Repetition of party.
Yeah, fair.
Repetition of party.
I really think we ought not to vote for UKIP. I think we ought not to vote for UKIP because I want to
Well, now that I'm back and I can just go along with what I was picked up on before. So, the reason that I would vote for the Gerald Party would be that their policies of...
Repetition,
deviation.
Their policies of containment with regards to Hitler in the 1934 assignment of terrible rules upon his entire country, which we shall no longer see as acceptable.
Deviation, I think. We do
I'm sorry, Mr. McDonald had it first, Mr. Rogers said Donny.
We do not have a policy of containing Hitler. Ladies and gentlemen, we should not vote UKIP because that would be an awful idea. They are mad people. They are bad humanoid creatures, carbon-based life forms.
How's that?
No.
He's riding the call. He's riding the call. Stop the timer.
Does anyone really think being in Europe is a good thing?
I'm not quiet. Excuse me.
Centralise a lot of regulation.
You know, this is just creating a hesitation now.
You have
stopped, man.
You have paused the timer, haven't you?
Wait just a minute.
Okay. So, Mr. Rogers is going to keep speaking. Go.
Yes. I can't remember.
Oh, deviation. Basically, the problem with being in Europe is that they are destroying our healthcare system. At the moment, you've got a European Working Time Directive, which limits the amount of time surgeons can spend in a hospital. And by doing so, they're not getting the regulated training they need. You can't do the standard 5 12-hour shifts in a row, which basically is putting patients at risk. What you want is somebody to start and do the day shift, somebody to then come in at the night shift.
Shifts. It's very shifty.
Speaking of shifts, one of the most shifty people on earth is Nigel Farage. I believe that at the previous debate, which we all watched on television, be it on the BBC, Sky News or ITV, I can say that we all saw a despicable gentleman who is the
I
guess more difficult every week.
The ranks here. So the judges are still deliberating and I'm fresh with my days. This house of what, sorry?
Yeah. Someone who came from the is just
Alright, another just 3 minutes, folks.
Can we carry on with UK?
No.
DUP?
No.
The Union Awards are tonight. Can we make some kind of thing out of that?
Abraham would sacrifice
Let's not.
Oh, yeah, she goes.
Oh, no. This house believes in the unconditional right to offend.
To what? Ooh.
Yeah, I saw that one.
This house would wear both collies.
No, because we're the terrific. Of course we would. This house believes in our what was it?
Unconditional right to offend.
Unconditional right to.
I'll start. This house would defend the unconditional right to offend, which is really fun to say. Because being able to criticise things that people say encourages debate. It brings about new ideas. It creates a system where we can discuss and we can develop and we can ensure that we know exactly what's going on within the world and the different. I'm going to repeat ideas, so. No, cool.
Alright, fuck that. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce our judges for tonight. We have trustee member Mr. Hogan. Treasurer Mr. Adair. We have Madam President Superfly, Koriaka. And we have Miss Internal Convener, Miss Childer. So judges, I trust you've come to a conclusion.
No!
Alright.
You're all winners.
Miss Dawn, are you going to deliver it?
I am indeed. That's the thing that happened. Okay, as you can tell by the amount of time we spent arguing it out in that room, that it wasn't an easy decision. You all had your strengths, and I'm immensely impressed. I mean, the standard was exceptionally high. But after a lot of debate and deliberation, we have decided that the winner this year is none other than Mr. Brendan Kelters.
This confirms you weren't really talking about the high standards of debate if you thought I won.
Thank you very much, judges, and congratulations, Mr. Kelters. We'll leave another round of applause. So it'll be a pleasure to name you Queen's Orator for the following year, even though you sadly won't be with us. I believe you're going to Oxford, is it?
No, Sheffield.
Sheffield!
Oxford, check me out.
So, Mr. Kelters, congratulations again, and would you like to lead us to the house bar? As Queen's Orator?
I'm afraid I can probably only stay for 20 minutes, but yes.
Newcastle! I have a word!
Where the heck did that happen?